Hello everyone, this is Eye on Africa for Friday, the 1st of July. Here are the headlines. Thousands of people march in the streets of Khartoum after 9 people are killed in protests yesterday. This as the government once again tries to cut down on internet access to prevent gatherings. It's the end of a year-long anti-jihadist effort in Mali. The EU Special Takuba task force has left the country after a steady deterioration of diplomatic relations between the ruling junta and Western nations. And with a little over 3 weeks to go until a controversial referendum, Tunisian President Kais Saied unveils a new draft constitution which would grant him broader powers and limit the authority of both the Prime Minister and Parliament. Good to have you with us. We begin with that story. Tunisian President Kais Saied has released a new draft constitution to replace the one that has been in place since 2014. It should replace the hybrid parliamentary presidential system with a strong presidency. He has called on Tunisians to approve it in a controversial referendum on July 25th, a year after he suspended parliament and seized broader powers. Fadil Alireza, Hamdi Tlili, and Lydia Blaise sent us this report from Tunis.
After a rushed drafting process, a new constitutional draft is ready. It's sparking debate amongst Tunisians on everything from the role of religion to a presidential system. The new text vastly expands the power of the presidency at the expense of parliament and the judiciary. We asked experts their opinions.
C'est plutôt une constitution qui s'éloigne de la.
It's a constitution that moves Tunisia away from democracy.
Une certaine centralisation du.
We see a stronger role for the president, a more presidential system, and a president above all accountability. He's not accountable to any institution.
Devant aucune autre structure.
Les articles 5, 6 et 7.
Articles 5, 6 and 7 lay out that Tunisia is part of the Islamic nation, that only the state works to achieve Islam's aims. So if the Tunisian state was diluted 3 times, what's left of the Tunisian state? There is no mention of the civil nature of the state, unlike in Article 2 of the previous constitution, which stipulated that Tunisia is a civil state based on citizenship.
Que la Tunisie est un État civil qui repose sur la citoyenneté.
Those who have official authorization to campaign for or against the new constitution have less than a month before the referendum. Many others have said that they will boycott, and there is speculation that there will be low turnout given the low turnout for the online consultation during the drafting process.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Khartoum this Friday, a day after 9 people were killed in demonstrations against the country's ruling generals. Large funeral marches were held, with others gathering at mosques after Friday prayers. The deadly crackdown on anti-government protests has left 113 people dead so far. Sophie Lamotte has the latest.
They were heading to the military palace in central Khartoum, calling for a civilian government. The peaceful protests quickly turned violent as police opened fire on protesters, killing 9 people on Thursday. Sudan's political transition was derailed last October by a military coup led by General al-Burhan, who toppled the transitional government that was in place since 2019, after 3 decades of authoritarian rule under Omar al-Bashir. Over 100 people have been killed in pro-democracy protests since then. But resistance hasn't weakened.
The people have to rely on themselves now, and they will never retreat until their goals are seen through. There is no people in the history of the world who have ever been defeated, and the Sudanese people will have victory over the military generals.
Sudan has another 8 months to find a consensus on the constitution and organize democratic elections. The UN and the African Union continue to apply pressure on the military government, with little success so far.
My main concern is that the end of the transitional period is fast approaching, yet progress in implementing the peace agreement has been slow. With only 8 months remaining, the window of opportunity to implement the key benchmarks is closing.
Political instability that further weakens the Sudanese economy on the verge of collapse, and some 9 million people could face acute hunger, according to the World Food Programme.
The EU's Takuba task force has left Mali, putting an end to anti-jihadist efforts after only 1 year on the ground. EU special forces were operating alongside France's Barkhane mission, but 2 military coups in Mali have caused diplomatic tensions to soar, ultimately leading to this withdrawal. Andrew Hillier has more.
It's a mission that's come to an abrupt end. The Takuba task force was created to share the burden of fighting jihadists in Mali. But as relations soured between France, its EU allies, and Mali's military rulers, Takuba has had no other choice but to pull out. Anti-French sentiment was already high in the region, but tensions between Mali and the EU also began to grow after the bloc imposed sanctions on the country for failing to organize elections following 2 military coups. Takuba was meant to pick up the slack as Paris wound down its Operation Barkhane, tasked with fighting terrorism in the Sahel. The Special Forces troops were headquartered in the city of Menaka and also had a presence in Gao. They focused on the Malian elliptical region, on the borders of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, where groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group in the Greater Sahara operate. It was made up of about 900 troops. 40% were French, and the others hailed from countries such as Estonia, the Czech Republic, Italy and Sweden. Its creation was spearheaded by France in 2020, which was eager to share the burden of combating jihadism in Mali since launching Operation Barkhane 6 years prior at the request of Malian authorities.
Well, let's stay in Mali. ECOWAS countries are set to meet this Sunday. They could decide to lift the sanctions that have been imposed on the country since January. In the Ivory Coast, the largest community of Malians outside of the country is hoping for a return to normal. The diaspora there and elsewhere has been seriously affected by the embargo since the beginning of the year. Hanan Ferjani has this report.
In Abidjan, this is the place where most people buy sheep. Ever since the ECOWAS regional bloc imposed economic sanctions on Mali in January, most of the cattle sold here has been coming from neighboring Niger and Burkina Faso. But the embargo on Malian cattle was recently lifted to cope with an increased demand as the Muslim Eid al-Adha holiday nears. An unexpected relief for traders like Diko.
If the borders are open, it's good for us. The 3 countries that have the cattle are Mali, Burkina and Niger. But when Mali is closed, we have less of it. If the sheep don't come, we don't make any money. The customers also suffer. But with this decision, all Muslims will be able to get their sheep. It's perfect.
But this opportunity wasn't extended to all economic sectors. Malian textile traders have had to make ends meet without being able to source material from their own country, which is particularly popular amongst consumers.
Bogoulons are made in Mali. Other clothes are also made in Mali. From January until now, we've barely made any money.
Amongst the 6 million Malians living in Ivory Coast, the overwhelming majority work in trade. But beyond the economic impact, many households have been affected by the ECOWAS sanctions. Families have been separated, while important events such as weddings and funerals have been impossible to hold.
If you have a relative who is sick and you're their emergency contact, you won't be able to see that person quickly. This all has to do with the sanctions, the embargo.
On the eve of an ECOWAS summit, which could see sanctions on Mali finally lifted, the diaspora in Abidjan is holding its breath and hoping that the regional leaders can finally come to an agreement.
Burundi is celebrating 60 years of independence this Friday. In Bujumbura, a long military parade was held. The president, Evariste Ndayishimiye, addressed the nation, and so did an envoy for the King of Belgium. Both men spoke of the devastating effects of colonization on Burundi.
Not all of the misfortunes inflicted on the country were because of us. They were due to others. People in Burundi were good.
The colonial regime was based on inequality and was totally unjustifiable.
Finally tonight, it is no secret that with gas prices rising, drivers around the world have been feeling the pinch. Many are switching to more efficient vehicles. In Benin and Togo, new electric motorbikes have begun to appear on the country's streets. Emmanuel Soji and Emmanuel Lopez have this report.
Benin's largest city is famous for its motorbike taxi drivers in their yellow shirts. Locally known as Kekenon, there are at least 300,000 drivers throughout the country. Christian Leon Zanu has been one for 5 years, and a few weeks ago he switched to using an electric motorbike.
It doesn't use petrol. And it's totally different from the motorbike I had.
Electric engines have fewer moving parts and face less wear and tear than gasoline-powered motors. They're charged at battery exchange points every 75 kilometres, and that costs under €2.
I would say I save about €15 a month.
By the end of the year, an estimated 50,000 electric motorbike taxis should be available to rent in Benin and Togo. Overall, the electric two-wheeler market looks set to flourish in a region where motorbikes are the main means of transport.
Today there are 90 million motorized two-wheelers on the African continent, more than 80% of which are used for commercial purposes. It's true that there is a culture of two-wheelers in Benin and Togo.
The greener credentials of electric bikes can also lead to tax breaks for companies. Shagan Bakari and his partner, the powerful business heavyweight Gagan Gupta, have benefited from the policies in Benin and Togo as the countries try to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions.
When we talk about carbon neutrality, about the environment, if there is no economic gain for the users, there is no way to choose to switch to electric. This is the only way to get people to make the ecological transition. Otherwise, this will remain wishful thinking.
By 2023, the two businessmen hope to set up production plants for zero-emission electric motorbikes in several countries on the continent. The market appeals to foreign industries, with Chinese and Indian firms already lining up to profit from the transition to electric mobility across Africa.
And that does it for Eye on Africa on this Friday. Thank you very much for watching. The news continues on France 24 right after this.
They observe. They contact us. They report, film, photograph. They are the voice of the voiceless. Your eyes in the far-flung reaches of the world. The Observers, a network of 5,000 committed citizens working with France 24.
One of our observers in Côte d'Ivoire, Gaspard.
Amateur footage and testimonials checked by our journalists and broadcast weekly. On The Observers, on France 24 and observers.france24.com.
France 24, more than ever before, is your window onto the world.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.